Elena pressed her face against the cold glass window of Romano's Italian restaurant. Inside, warm yellow light filled the room. Families sat around wooden tables, eating hot food and laughing together. The smell of fresh bread and tomato sauce made her stomach hurt with hunger. She had not eaten anything real in 3 days. Yesterday, she found half a sandwich in a trash can behind a coffee shop. The day before, an old woman gave her an apple that was starting to turn brown. That was all. Elena pulled her thin jacket tighter around her body. The November wind cut through the holes in the fabric like sharp knives. Her hands were red and cracked from the cold. Her shoes had holes too, and her socks were wet from walking through puddles. She was 16 years old, but she looked younger. Living on the streets had made her thin and small. Her dark hair was dirty and tangled. She tried to keep it neat, but it was hard when you had nowhere to wash properly. Elena had been standing outside the restaurant for an hour, watching people eat. She was trying to find the courage to go inside. She knew what she wanted to ask, but she was scared they would laugh at her or call the police. Through the window, she could see an old piano in the corner of the restaurant. It was brown wood, and some of the keys looked yellow with age. No, one was playing it. Most people did not even look at it. But Elena could not stop staring at it. The piano reminded her of better days. Days when she had a home and a mother who loved her. Days when music filled her life instead of hunger and fear. A man came out of the restaurant. He was short and round, with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore a white apron covered in sauce stains. This had to be Mr. Romano, the owner. Elena had heard other people on the street talk about him. They said he was a good man, but she was still afraid. Mr. Romano lit a cigarette and leaned against the wall. He looked tired after a long day of work. Elena knew this was her chance. If she did not ask now, she might never have the courage again. She walked slowly toward him, her legs shaking. Each step felt heavy, like her feet were made of stone. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might jump out of her chest. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Mr. Romano looked up, surprised to see a young girl standing there in the cold. His eyes were not angry, just curious. "Yes?" he said gently. Elena's mouth felt dry. She tried to swallow, but there was nothing to swallow. She looked down at her dirty shoes, then back up at his face. "I was wondering, may I play your piano for just a piece of food?" She pointed through the window at the old piano in the corner. Her hand was shaking. Mr. Romano's eyebrows went up. He looked at this skinny, dirty girl, then at his piano, then back at her. A small smile came to his face, but it was not a mean smile. It was the kind of smile adults get when children say something cute. "You play piano?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I used to. I can play really well." Elena's words came out fast, like water from a broken pipe. "I just need something to eat, anything, even just bread. I can play beautiful music for you and your customers." Mr. Romano took a long look at her. He saw how thin she was, how her clothes were too big and full of holes. He saw how she tried to stand up straight, even though she was clearly very tired and hungry. Other people came and went on the street, but no one else stopped to talk to the homeless girl. Most people looked away when they saw her, as if she was not really there. "You know," Mr. Romano said slowly, "that piano has not been played in months, maybe even a year. It is probably out of tune." "That is okay," Elena said quickly. "I can make it sound good anyway. Music is music, even on an old piano." Mr. Romano finished his cigarette and threw it in the trash can near the door. He studied Elena's face for a moment. There was something in her eyes that was different from other street kids he had seen. She looked desperate, yes, but there was also something else. Something that reminded him of his own daughter when she really wanted something important. "All right," he said finally. "Come inside where it is warm. Play us a song, and we will see what we can do about some food." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Mr. Romano held the door open for her. As they walked inside, the warm air hit Elena's face like a gentle hug. The restaurant was full of people eating dinner. It smelled like heaven to someone who had not had a real meal in days. Some of the customers looked up when they saw Elena walk in. A few frowned when they saw her dirty clothes and messy hair. Elena felt her cheeks turn red with shame, but she kept walking toward the piano. The piano sat in the corner, just like she had seen through the window. It was old but still beautiful. The wood was scratched in some places, and yes, some of the keys were yellow. But to Elena, it looked like the most wonderful thing in the world. Mr. Romano called to his staff in the kitchen. "Maria, Tony, come, see this. This young lady is going to play piano for us." A woman with curly black hair came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Behind her came a young man with the same dark eyes as Mr. Romano. They both looked at Elena with curious expressions. "She's going to play?" Maria asked. "On that old thing?" "That is what she says," Mr. Romano replied. "And if she does, we give her some food." Elena heard them talking about her, but she did not mind. She was used to people talking about her like she was not there. All that mattered now was the piano. She sat down on the small bench in front of the keyboard. The seat was a little too high for her, but that was okay. She had played on worse pianos in worse places. Elena placed her hands on the keys but did not press them yet. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her mind, she could hear her mother's voice from long ago, gentle and encouraging. "Music comes from the heart, Elena. Do not think too much. Just feel, and let your fingers follow." Around her, the restaurant continued its normal evening business. People ate and talked and laughed, but Elena was somewhere else now, somewhere far from hunger and cold and fear. She was back in the world where music lived, where her fingers knew exactly what to do. She opened her eyes, looked down at the yellowed keys, and began to play. Elena's fingers touched the piano keys for the first time in months. The keys felt cold under her skin, and some of them stuck a little when she pressed them. She could tell right away that the piano had not been tuned in a long time. Some notes sounded higher than they should, and others sounded lower, but none of that mattered to Elena. After so long without music, even a broken piano felt like coming home. She started with a few simple notes, just to feel how the piano responded. The abai sound was not perfect, but it was still music. She pressed the keys gently at first, getting used to how hard she needed to push to make clear sounds. Around her, the restaurant was still busy with dinner time. People were eating pasta and pizza, drinking wine, and talking loudly with their families. Most of them did not even notice that someone had sat down at the old piano in the corner. Mr. Romano stood near the kitchen door, watching Elena with curious eyes. He had agreed to let her play mostly because he felt sorry for her. He did not really expect much. The piano was old and had not been played in so long that he had almost forgotten it was there. Maria, the cook, wiped her hands on her apron and shook her head. "That poor girl," she whispered to Tony. "She looks like she has not eaten in days." Tony nodded. "Papa always feeds the hungry ones," he said, "even if they cannot really play." They expected Elena to play something simple, maybe Happy Birthday or a children's song, something easy that would last a few minutes, and then they could give her a plate of leftover bread and send her on her way with a smile. Elena closed her eyes again and let her mind drift back to the music lessons she used to take. She remembered sitting in her mother's music room with its big windows and shelves full of sheet music. She remembered her mother's patient voice explaining how to make each note sing. "Choose something you love," her mother used to say. "Music, without love, is just noise." Elena knew exactly what she wanted to play. It was a piece by Chopin that her mother had taught her when she was 14. It was called Nocturne in E-flat major, and it was one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever written. It was also very difficult to play well. She had played it for her mother just 2 weeks before the car accident that changed everything. She remembered how proud her mother had looked that day, how she had clapped and said, "Elena, you have real talent, never forget that." Now, sitting in this restaurant with her dirty clothes and empty stomach, Elena wanted to play it again. Not for the people eating dinner, not even for the food she desperately needed. She wanted to play it for her mother, wherever she was now. Elena placed her hands in the right position on the keys. The opening of the piece was soft and gentle, like a lullaby. She began to play. The first notes floated through the restaurant like whispers. They were so quiet that at first, only the people sitting closest to the piano noticed. But there was something special about the way Elena played, even these first simple notes. Her fingers moved across the keys with a grace that seemed impossible for someone so young and so tired. Despite the piano being old and out of tune, the music that came from it was beautiful. Elena knew how to work with the broken instrument, how to make it sing even when some of its voice was damaged. As the piece continued, more people in the restaurant began to notice. The melody was sad, but also hopeful, like rain falling on flowers. It told a story without words, a story of loss and longing, but also of beauty that could not be destroyed. A man eating spaghetti near the piano put down his fork and turned to listen. A woman celebrating her birthday with her family stopped talking and looked toward the corner where this unexpected music was coming from. Elena's playing grew stronger and more confident. Her hands moved faster now, dancing across the keys in patterns that looked almost impossible. The music filled every corner of the restaurant, weaving between the tables and wrapping around the people like a warm blanket. Mr. Romano's mouth fell, open. This was not what he had expected at all. This homeless girl was not just playing piano, she was creating magic. The old forgotten instrument in his corner was singing like it had never sung before. "Madonna mia," Maria whispered. Hand over her heart. Listen to that. Tony stopped wiping down tables and stood perfectly still. He had studied music in school and he knew enough to recognize real talent when he heard it. This girl was not just good, she was extraordinary. The music grew more complex as Elena reached the middle section of the piece. Her left hand played deep, rich notes that sounded like a heartbeat, while her right hand created a melody that seemed to float above everything else. The two parts worked together like dancers, sometimes moving together, sometimes moving apart, but always in perfect harmony. By now, almost everyone in the restaurant was listening. Conversations had stopped. People who had been looking at their phones put them down. Children who had been fidgeting in their chairs sat perfectly still. Elena was lost in the music now. She forgot about being hungry, forgot about being cold, forgot about all the terrible things that had happened to her. For these few minutes, she was just a musician playing a beautiful piece of music, the way it was meant to be played. Her fingers flew across the keys in the most difficult part of the piece. The music built and built, becoming more passionate and more desperate, like someone crying out for something they had lost. But then it began to calm down, becoming gentle and peaceful again. As the piece moved toward its ending, Elena played softer and softer. The last notes were barely whispers, so quiet that everyone in the restaurant had to hold their breath to hear them. When Elena played the final note, she kept her hands on the keys for a moment longer, letting the sound fade away completely. Then she lifted her hands and placed them in her lap. The restaurant was completely silent. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. No one even seemed to breathe. Elena opened her eyes and looked around the room. Everyone was staring at her. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others looked shocked, like they could not believe what they had just heard. She felt scared suddenly. Had she done something wrong? Had the music been too loud? Maybe these people did not like classical music. Then, from somewhere in the back of the restaurant, one person began to clap. Slowly, others joined in. Soon the entire restaurant was filled with applause. Not polite, quiet clapping, but loud, enthusiastic applause that seemed to go on forever. People stood up from their tables. Some of them were crying. Others were shaking their heads in amazement. Elena sat on the piano bench, not sure what to do. She had played for food, and now all these strangers were treating her like she had just given them the most wonderful gift. Mr. Romano walked over to her, his eyes bright with tears he was trying not to let fall. "Young lady," he said, his voice shaking a little, "where did you learn to play like that?" The clapping went on and on. Elena had never heard applause like this before, not even when she played in recitals at the music school. This was different. It was not just polite clapping because people thought they should clap. These people were clapping because they truly felt something. An older woman at a table near the front had tears running down her cheeks. She was not trying to hide them or wipe them away. She just let them fall while she clapped. A businessman who had been checking his phone during most of his dinner now stood with his hands high above his head, clapping as hard as he could. His expensive suit and tie made him look very serious, but his face showed pure joy. Even the children in the restaurant were clapping. A little boy who could not have been more than 5 years old was jumping up and down in his chair, his small hands making tiny clapping sounds that mixed with all the others. Elena looked around the room and felt overwhelmed. She had played that piece many times before, in her mother's music room, in practice rooms at school, even in some small recitals. But she had never seen people react like this. Mr. Romano was still standing next to the piano, shaking his head in amazement. "In 40 years of running this restaurant," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "I have never heard anything so beautiful." Maria came out of the kitchen, her apron still tied around her waist. She had flour on her hands from making fresh pasta, but she did not care. She walked straight to Elena and took her dirty hands in her clean ones. "Child," she said, "that was a gift from God. You have something special." Elena felt her cheeks turn red. She was not used to so much attention, especially good attention. For the past 2 years, when people noticed her at all, it was usually to tell her to move away from their store or to stop asking for money. Tony came over too, carrying a plate of food. It was not leftovers or old bread. It was a full dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce, fresh bread with butter, and a small salad. The plate was warm, and steam rose from the pasta. "Here," he said, setting the plate down on a small table next to the piano. "This is for you." Elena stared at the food. It looked and smelled better than anything she had imagined during her hungry days on the street. Her stomach made a loud noise that made her embarrassed, but Tony just smiled. "Eat," he said kindly. "You must be very hungry." But Elena could not move toward the food yet. Something was happening in the restaurant that she did not understand. People were not going back to their own dinners. Instead, they were coming closer to the piano area. A woman with gray hair and a purple dress approached carefully. "Excuse me, dear," she said to Elena. "I used to teach piano myself many years ago. Where did you study? Who was your teacher?" Elena did not know how to answer. She looked down at her dirty clothes and then back at this elegant woman who was asking about her education as if she was a real musician, not just a homeless girl. My mother taught me," Elena said quietly. "Your mother must be a wonderful teacher," the woman said. "Is she a professional musician?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The sadness that she usually tried to push away came rushing back all at once. Mr. Romano saw that Elena was upset and stepped closer. "Maybe we should let her eat first," he said gently to the woman. "She has had a long day." But other people were gathering around too. They all wanted to know more about this girl who had just created magic with an old, broken piano. "I have never heard anything like that," said a young father who was there with his wife and baby. "It was like the piano was crying and singing at the same time." "She made that old thing sound like a concert grand piano," said another man. I could not believe my ears. Elena felt like she was in a dream. All these well-dressed, well-fed people were talking about her music like it was something important. They were looking at her like she was someone special, not someone to be ignored or pushed away. A teenage girl about Elena's age came forward. She was wearing nice clothes and had clean, shiny hair. Everything about her showed that she had a good life, a safe life. "That was amazing," the girl said. "I take piano lessons, but I could never play like that. How long have you been playing?" "Since I was 6, Elena said, her voice still very quiet. 10 years, the girl said, doing the math. "Wow, you must practice so much. Where do you practice?" Elena did not know how to explain that she practiced on broken pianos in community centers when they were open, or on old keyboards in churches when the doors were unlocked, or sometimes she just practiced on tabletops when she could not find a real piano at all. "Different places," she said finally. The businessman who had been clapping so hard came over with his wife. "Young lady," he said, "that was the most beautiful music I have heard in years. My wife and I go to the symphony orchestra every month, and tonight you gave us something just as special." His wife nodded. "It was like you were telling us a story with the music. A sad story, but also a hopeful one." Elena was surprised that they understood. That was exactly what the music was supposed to do. Chopin had written it to tell a story, and her mother had taught her how to make people feel that story when she played. "Music should make people feel something," her mother used to say. "If the listeners do not feel anything, then you are just moving your fingers on keys." Tonight, Elena had definitely made people feel something. Mr. Romano brought over a chair so Elena could sit down and eat. The pasta was still warm, and it tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. But she found it hard to concentrate on the food because people kept coming over to talk to her. A family from a table in the back approached. The mother spoke with an accent that sounded like she might be from another country. "My daughter," she said. "She takes piano lessons too, but her teacher never taught her to play with so much feeling. How do you make the music sound so alive?" Elena thought about this question while she took another bite of the delicious pasta. How could she explain something that her mother had taught her, but that was also just part of who she was? "I think about what the music means," she said finally. "This piece is about missing someone you love. When I play it, I think about people I miss." The woman nodded like she understood perfectly. "Yes," she said. "That is what I heard in your playing. Missing someone." As Elena continued eating, she noticed that something had changed in the restaurant. Before she played, it had been a normal dinner place where families came to eat and talk. Now it felt different. People were talking to strangers at other tables, sharing how the music had made them feel. An older man was telling a couple at the next table about how the music reminded him of his late wife, who used to love classical piano. A woman was explaining to her children why the music had made her cry. Elena had brought these strangers together somehow. Her music had made them want to connect with each other, to share their feelings instead of just eating their dinner and going home. She looked around the room at all these people who just 30 minutes ago had no idea she existed. Now they were treating her like she was important, like she had given them something valuable. For the first time in 2 years, Elena felt like maybe she was still the person she used to be. Maybe she was still the girl who could make beautiful music, even if everything else in her life had fallen apart. Elena finished eating the wonderful pasta, but her stomach still felt strange. It had been so long since she had eaten a full meal that her body did not know what to do with all the good food. She felt grateful and also a little sick at the same time. The restaurant was starting to empty out as people finished their dinners and headed home, but some customers stayed longer than usual, still talking about the music they had heard. The atmosphere felt different now, warmer somehow, like something special had happened that no one wanted to end. Mr. Romano brought Elena a glass of water and sat down in the chair across from her. His kind eyes looked worried. "Tell me, child," he said gently. "Where are your parents? Are they looking for you?" Elena's hand started shaking. She put the water glass down carefully so she would not drop it. This was the question she always dreaded, the one that made everything real again. "I do not have parents anymore," she said, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Mr. Romano's face grew sad. "I am sorry to hear that. Do you have other family? Grandparents, aunts or uncles?" Elena shook her head. "There is no one." Maria came over with a warm towel and handed it to Elena. "Here, dear, clean your hands and face, you will feel better." The towel felt amazing against Elena's skin. It had been days since she had been able to wash properly. As she cleaned her face, she felt some of the dirt and sadness wash away too. "How long have you been alone?" Mr. Romano asked carefully. Elena thought about it. Sometimes the days blended together when you lived on the street. 2 years, she said. Maybe a little more. 2 years, Maria gasped. But you are so young. How have you survived? Elena looked down at her hands. They were cleaner now, but still showed the marks of living rough. Her fingers had small cuts from cold weather, and her nails were broken and dirty. "I stay in shelters when there is room," she said. "Sometimes I sleep in doorways or under bridges. I find food where I can, and I look for pianos." "Pianos?" Tony asked. He had been listening from behind the counter. "Yes, there are pianos in some community centers and churches and schools. When the buildings are open, sometimes I can play. That is how I keep practicing." Mr. Romano shook his head sadly. "And before? Before you were alone? You said your mother taught you piano." This was the hardest part to talk about. Elena had not told her story to anyone in a very long time. Most people on the street did not ask, and most people with homes did not care. But these people had listened to her music. They had seen something in her that was worth caring about. Maybe they would understand. "My mother was a piano teacher," Elena began slowly. "She taught at the Westmont Conservatory. That is a very good music school here in the city." Maria nodded. She had heard of Westmont. It was where rich families sent their children to learn music. "My mother's name was Sarah Chen. She was born in China but came here when she was young. She could play any piece of music just by hearing it once. She was amazing." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she continued talking. "We lived in a nice apartment near the school. It had a big music room with a beautiful grand piano. Every day after regular school I would come home and practice. My mother would sit with me and help me learn new pieces." "She sounds like a wonderful mother," Mr. Romano said softly. "She was. She never got angry when I made mistakes. She would just show me the right way to play and let me try again. She said that making mistakes was how you learn to make beautiful music." Elena wiped her eyes with the clean towel. "She taught me that piano was not just about playing the right notes. She taught me that each piece of music tells a story, and the piano player's job is to help people hear that story. That is exactly what you did tonight," said the woman with gray hair who was still sitting at a nearby table. "You told us a story with that beautiful piece." Elena managed a small smile. "My mother would have been happy to hear you say that." "What happened to her?" Maria asked gently. Elena took a deep breath. This was the part that still felt like a bad dream, even after 2 years. "There was a car accident. It was raining very hard, and another driver ran a red light. My mother was coming home from teaching her evening students. The doctor said she died right away, that she did not suffer. The restaurant was very quiet now. Even the sounds from the kitchen had stopped. I am so sorry, Mr. Romano said. His own eyes looked wet. After my mother died, everything changed very fast. I found out that we owed a lot of money on our apartment. My mother had been sick before the accident, and the medical bills were very expensive. I did not know about any of that. Elena remembered those terrible weeks after the funeral. People in suits coming to the apartment, taking away the furniture, even the beautiful grand piano. My father, well, he left when I was very small. I do not remember him. My mother said he could not handle being a father, so he went away. After my mother died, the state tried to find him, but he did not want to take me. Tony made an angry sound. What kind of man abandons his own child? Elena shrugged. She had stopped being angry about her father a long time ago. My mother said some people are just not meant to be parents. She said it was better that he left than stayed and made us unhappy. So what happened next? Maria asked. Social services put me in a foster home at first. The family was okay, but they did not understand about music. They said piano lessons were too expensive and not practical. They wanted me to focus on school subjects that would help me get a regular job. Elena remembered how empty she felt in that house with no music, and no one who understood why music mattered so much. I tried to stay there and be a good foster daughter, but I felt like I was disappearing, like the part of me that was really me was dying without music. After 6 months, I could not stand it anymore. You ran away, Mr. Romano said. It was not a question. Yes. I thought I could find another family, one that would let me keep playing piano. But it does not work that way. Once you run away, they put you in different kinds of places. Group homes with lots of other kids who have problems. No one cares about music in places like that. Elena looked around the warm restaurant, thinking about all the cold places she had slept since then. I kept running away from wherever they'd put me. Finally, I just stayed on the street. At least there, no one could stop me from finding pianos to play. The silence stretched on. Elena wondered if she had said too much, if these kind people now thought she was just a troublemaker who would not stay where adults put her. But when she looked up, she saw that they were not judging her. They looked sad for her, and angry at a world that could let a talented young girl fall through the cracks. That conservatory where your mother taught, Mr. Romano said finally. Did they not try to help you? Elena's face grew bitter. They said they were sorry for my loss. They even came to the funeral. But when I went there after I aged out of foster care, asking if I could take lessons or just practice sometimes, they said they could not help someone without money. They said music education was a business, not a charity. This was the betrayal that hurt almost as much as losing her mother. The place where her mother had given so much of her life. The place that had been like a second home to Elena, had turned her away when she needed them most. They knew my mother for 15 years, Elena said, the old anger creeping into her voice. She brought that school so many good students. She helped make their reputation. But when her daughter needed help, they just closed their doors. Mr. Romano stood up and started pacing around the small space near the piano. Elena could see that he was upset. This is not right, he said. A girl with your talent should be in school, learning more music, not living on the street. Talent does not matter if you do not have money, Elena said simply. That is what I learned. Mrs. Chen sat at table 12 with her husband, celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. They had chosen Romano's because it was where they had their first date all those years ago. The restaurant held special memories for them. When the young girl started playing piano, Mrs. Chen felt something stir in her heart. The music was so beautiful, so full of emotion, that she could not help but cry. Her husband reached across the table and held her hand as they listened. Mrs. Chen had grown up in a family that loved classical music. Her parents had saved money to buy her piano lessons when she was young, though she never became very good at playing. But she knew enough about music to recognize something extraordinary when she heard it. As Elena played, Mrs. Chen quietly took out her phone. At first, she just wanted to remember this moment. The music was too beautiful to let it disappear forever. She started recording. She held the phone low, trying not to disturb anyone around her. The video was not perfect. You could hear people talking in the background, and sometimes her hand shook a little. But the music came through clearly, and you could see Elena at the piano, completely lost in what she was playing. When Elena finished, and the applause started, Mrs. Chen stopped recording. She looked down at her phone and saw that she had captured nearly 4 minutes of the performance. Her hands were still shaking from the emotion of what she had just witnessed. David, she whispered to her husband, did you hear that? That girl is homeless. She asked to play for food. Her husband nodded, wiping his own eyes. That was incredible. She has a real gift. Mrs. Chen looked at the video on her phone. Elena looked so small and fragile in the recording, but the music that came from her was huge and powerful. There was something about the contrast that broke Mrs. Chen's heart. People should see this, she said to her husband. The world should know about this girl. At first, she just wanted to share it with her daughter, who lived in another city. Her daughter was a teacher who worked with children from difficult backgrounds. Mrs. Chen thought she would appreciate seeing how music could survive even in the worst circumstances. She sent the video to her daughter with a simple message. We just heard something amazing. This homeless girl played for food at Romano's. Listen to this. But then Mrs. Chen thought about her friends and her sister and her coworkers who always said there was no good news anymore, that the world was full of sadness and cruelty. Here was something beautiful, something that showed the power of human talent and kindness. She posted the video on her Facebook page. She was not someone who posted very often, mostly just pictures of her garden and updates about family events. But this felt important. She wrote, Tonight at Romano's restaurant, this homeless teenage girl asked if she could play piano for food. What happened next brought the entire restaurant to tears. In a world full of bad news, sometimes you witness something that reminds you there is still beauty and hope. Please share this. People need to see that talent and dreams can survive even in the hardest circumstances. Mrs. Chen's daughter saw the post first. She immediately shared it with her teacher friends, adding her own comment. This is why arts, education matters. This is why we can never give up on kids no matter their circumstances. One of those teachers shared it in a group for music educators. Another shared it with a friend who worked at a local news station. By the time Elena was finishing her dinner at Romano's, the video had been shared 50 times. People were adding their own comments. This made me cry. What an angel. Someone needs to help this girl. Mrs. Chen's sister saw the video at 11 o'clock that night and immediately called her. Where did you find this girl? This is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. She just walked into the restaurant, Mrs. Chen explained. She was so thin and dirty, but when she played, it was like magic. Her sister shared the video with her book club friends. One of them had a daughter who worked in social media marketing. The daughter knew how to make things spread quickly online. She shared the video on Twitter with hashtags like Hidden Genes, Shark Music, Art Homeless, Shark Hope. She also posted it on TikTok, though she had to trim it down to fit the time limit. By midnight, the video had been shared over 1,000 times across different platforms. People were staying up late, sending it to friends and family, adding their own comments and reactions. A music blogger in Los Angeles saw the video at 2 a.m. and immediately wrote a post about it. Sometimes you stumble across something that reminds you why music matters, she wrote. This homeless teenager's performance will restore your faith in the power of art. The blogger had hundreds of thousands of followers. When she posted the video, it exploded. By morning, Elena's performance had been viewed over 1 million times. The comments were pouring in from around the world. This girl has more talent than most professional musicians. How is someone this gifted living on the street? This broke my heart and healed it at the same time. We need to find this girl and help her. News outlets started picking up the story. A local television station sent a reporter to Romano's first thing in the morning, hoping to find Elena. But she was not there. She had left after dinner the night before, not knowing that her life was about to change completely. The reporter interviewed Mr. Romano instead. That girl, he said into the camera, she has something special. In 40 years of running this restaurant, I have never seen anything like what happened last night. The news story ran on the morning show. Other stations picked it up for their evening broadcasts. Each time the story was shared, more people saw the video of Elena playing. Musicians started sharing it. A famous pianist in New York posted it on her Instagram with the caption, "This is what real music sounds like. This girl understands something that cannot be taught in schools." Music teachers were showing the video to their students. This is why we practice, they said. Music can survive anything if you truly love it. Social media influencers with millions of followers started posting about Elena. Each share brought exponentially more views, more comments, more people learning about the homeless girl who could create magic with an old piano. By the second day, Elena's story was trending on Twitter. The hashtag Piano Girl was being used thousands of times per hour. People were sharing not just the video, but their own stories about music, about talent going unnoticed, about young people who needed help. News shows were running segments about Elena's story. They talked about homelessness, about arts education, about how society sometimes fails its most gifted children. A late-night talk show host played the video for his audience and wiped away tears. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is what happens when you give talent a chance to shine. Somewhere in our city, this girl is sleeping on the street tonight. That's not acceptable." Music schools around the country started posting on social media, saying they wanted to offer Elena scholarships if she could be found. 3 days after Mrs. Chen posted the video, it had been viewed over 20 million times. Elena had become famous without even knowing it. People were calling her the Piano Girl and the Street Angel. Her story had touched something deep in people's hearts. The idea that beauty and talent could survive even in the worst circumstances, that diamonds really could be found in the rough. But Elena herself had no idea about any of this. She had spent the 3 days since leaving Romano's doing what she always did, looking for food, looking for safe places to sleep, and looking for pianos to play. She had found a piano in a community center basement and spent an hour playing before janitor told her the building was closing. She had no way of knowing that millions of people around the world were looking for her, wanting to help her, moved by the same music that had always been her refuge. The video that Mrs. Chen had recorded on impulse was becoming something much bigger than anyone had expected. It was sparking conversations about homelessness, about education, about the value of arts in society. But most of all, it was giving people hope. In a world that often felt dark and hopeless, Elena's music reminded people that beauty still existed, that talent could not be destroyed by circumstances, and that sometimes the most extraordinary gifts came from the most unexpected places. Elena woke up in the doorway of a closed bookstore, shivering in the early morning cold. She had been sleeping there for 2 nights, curled up in her thin jacket with yesterday's newspaper as a blanket. The concrete was hard against her back, and her whole body ached. She did not know that 3 blocks away a news van was parked outside Romano's restaurant. She did not know that reporters were asking Mr. Romano questions about her, or that her picture from a security camera was being shown on television screens across the country. Elena stood up slowly, folding the newspaper and putting it in her jacket pocket. You never knew when you might need something to lie on later. She started walking toward the community center, hoping they might have free breakfast this morning. As she walked down the street, she noticed people looking at their phones more than usual. Groups of people stood on street corners, showing each other something on their screens and talking excitedly. But Elena was used to being invisible to most people, so she did not think their excitement had anything to do with her. At the community center, Elena got in line for breakfast. The volunteers were talking among themselves as they served oatmeal and toast to the homeless people who had come for food. Have you seen this video? One volunteer asked another. It's everywhere online. This homeless girl playing piano like a professional musician. Oh yes, the other volunteer replied. My daughter sent it to me last night. Made me cry. That poor child has such a gift. Elena accepted her bowl of oatmeal and found a seat at one of the long tables. Around her, other homeless people were eating quietly, focused on getting as much nutrition as possible while the food was available. But Elena noticed that some of the volunteers kept looking in her direction. One older woman seemed especially interested in her, studying her face carefully. Finally, the woman came over to Elena's table. Excuse me, dear, she said gently. I know this might sound strange, but do you play piano? Elena looked up, surprised. How could this woman know that? Yes, she said carefully. Sometimes. The woman's eyes grew wide. She pulled out her phone and showed Elena the screen. Is this you? Elena nearly choked on her oatmeal. There on the phone was a video of her at Romano's restaurant playing the piano. She could see herself, clearly sitting at the old piano in her dirty clothes. Where did you get this? Elena asked, her voice shaking. It's everywhere, the woman said excitedly. Every news website, every social media platform. Millions of people have watched you play. You're famous. Elena stared at the phone screen. The video showed her playing, and she could see all the people in the restaurant listening with tears in their eyes. In the comments below, there were thousands of messages from people around the world. I don't understand, Elena said. How did this happen? The volunteer sat down next to her. Someone in the restaurant recorded you playing and shared it online. It spread so fast that within 2 days everyone was talking about it. People are calling you the piano girl. Elena's hands started shaking. She had always been invisible, someone people looked past or ignored. The idea that millions of strangers had seen her, heard her music, seemed impossible. What are people saying? She asked quietly. The woman scrolled through some of the comments. Listen to this. This girl has more talent in her little finger than most people have in their whole body. And this one, I've been a professional musician for 20 years, and I've never heard anyone play with such emotion. And look at this. We need to find this girl and help her get the education she deserves. Elena felt dizzy. She put down her spoon and tried to breathe normally. There's more, the volunteer continued. Music schools are trying to find you. They want to offer you scholarships. There's a fundraising page that has already raised over $50,000. People want to help you. $50,000. Elena had never imagined that much money in her whole life. When you lived day to day, worrying about where your next meal would come from, that amount seemed like all the money in the world. I need to call someone, the volunteer said, pulling out her phone again. The news stations have been asking all the shelters and community centers to watch for you. Everyone wants to interview you. Wait, Elena said, panic rising in her voice. I don't want to be on television. I just played for food. But it was too late. The volunteer was already making a phone call. This is Linda at the downtown community center. I found her. Yes, the piano girl. She's here right now. Within an hour, Romano's restaurant was crowded with people. News trucks lined the street outside. Mr. Romano had called his whole family to come help manage the situation. When Elena arrived with Linda from the community center, she could not believe her eyes. There were cameras everywhere, and people with microphones wanting to talk to her. Mr. Romano saw her and immediately came over, putting his arm around her shoulders protectively. It's okay, he said. We'll take care of you. But Elena felt overwhelmed by all the attention. She was not used to being the center of anything, especially not something this big. A reporter with perfect hair and a bright smile approached with a cameraman. Elena, I'm Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 News. The whole world wants to know more about you. How does it feel to be famous? Elena looked around at all the faces staring at her, all the cameras pointed in her direction. I'm not famous, she said quietly. I'm just someone who plays piano. But your story has inspired millions of people, the reporter continued. What do you want to say to all the people who have watched your video and been moved by your music? Elena did not know what to say. She had played that night because she was hungry, not because she wanted to inspire anyone. The attention felt strange and frightening. More reporters pushed forward with their questions. Elena, what's it like? Being homeless? How long have you been living on the streets? What are your dreams for the future? Mr. Romano held up his hand. Please give the girl some space. She's had a difficult few days. Maria came out of the kitchen with a plate of food for Elena. Here, child. Eat something. You look too thin. As Elena ate, people continued to gather outside the restaurant. Some were reporters and camera crews, but others were just regular people who had seen the video and wanted to meet her. A woman in an expensive car pulled up and got out, carrying flowers. I just wanted to thank you, she said to Elena. Your music reminded me why I fell in love with piano when I was young. I hadn't played in years, but last night I sat down at my piano for the first time in decades. A man in a business suit came in with an envelope. This is from my company, he said. We want to sponsor your music education. Whatever you need, lessons, a piano, school tuition, we want to help. Elena's phone, which she had found in a dumpster months ago and managed to keep working, started buzzing constantly. Somehow people had found her number and were calling and texting nonstop. The messages were mostly kind, but they were overwhelming. You are an inspiration. Please don't give up on your dreams. I want to donate money to help you. You remind me that there is still beauty in the world. By afternoon, Elena learned that the fundraising page created by strangers had reached over $200,000. Music schools from around the country were calling Romano's restaurant, trying to reach her with scholarship offers. The Westmont Conservatory, the same school that had turned her away 2 years ago, released a public statement saying they were deeply sorry for not doing more to help a former faculty member's daughter, and that they would like to correct this oversight immediately. Elena felt angry when she heard about Westmont's statement. Now they want to help, she said to Mr. Romano. When I needed them, they said no. Now that I'm famous, suddenly they care. Mr. Romano nodded. Some people only do the right thing when others are watching, he said. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't accept help now, if it's good help. A representative from the Manhattan School of Music called personally. We would be honored to have Elena as a student, she said. Full scholarship, including housing and living expenses. No strings attached. Elena listened to all these offers with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. 3 days ago, she had been nobody. Now everyone wanted to give her things, to be part of her story. But the attention was also exhausting. She was not used to talking to so many people, to having cameras pointed at her, to having strangers know her name. That evening, as the crowds finally began to thin out, Elena sat at the piano in Romano's restaurant, the same piano where this had all started. She played softly just for herself, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The music helped her think, the way it always had. People meant well, she realized. They had been moved by her story and wanted to help. But it was a lot to process for someone who had been surviving alone for 2 years. Mr. Romano sat down nearby, listening to her play. "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" he said when she finished. Elena nodded. "I just wanted something to eat. I never expected this." "Sometimes," Mr. Romano said wisely, "life gives us exactly what we need, but not in the way we expect it." Elena sat in a small office above Romano's restaurant, surrounded by papers and people she had never met before. Mr. Romano had offered her the apartment upstairs as a safe place to stay while she figured out what to do next. It was the first real bed she had slept in for 2 years. The office was full of adults who all seemed to want to help her, but their help came with complicated words and legal documents that made Elena's head hurt. There was a lawyer, a social worker, a representative from Child Services, and someone from a music foundation. "The important thing," said Ms. Patricia Huang, the lawyer who had volunteered to help Elena for free, "is that you understand all your options before you make any decisions. You don't have to choose anything right now." Elena nodded, but she felt confused and overwhelmed. Everyone was talking about her future as if it was something they could plan and control. For 2 years, she had lived one day at a time, just trying to survive. Now people wanted her to think about years ahead. "Let's go through the offers again," Ms. Huang said, opening a folder full of papers. "The Manhattan School of Music is offering a full scholarship, including housing and a living allowance. The San Francisco Conservatory has made a similar offer, so have schools in Boston, Chicago, and even London." Elena looked at all the papers. Each one represented a life she could have, a future that seemed almost too good to be true. But they also represented leaving everything familiar behind, trusting people she did not know. "What about Westmont?" asked David Chen, the social worker, assigned to her case. Ms. Huang's face grew serious. "Westmont has made an offer, but I would be careful about that one. They ignored Elena when she needed help 2 years ago. Now they want good publicity." Elena felt a flash of anger thinking about Westmont. She remembered walking into that building where her mother had worked for 15 years, asking for help and being turned away like she was nothing. "I don't want to go to Westmont," she said firmly. "They had their chance to help me." "That's completely understandable," Ms. Huang said. "You have plenty of other excellent options." The representative from the Hidden Talents Foundation, a woman named Carol Morrison, leaned forward. "Elena, I want you to know that whatever school you choose, our foundation will provide additional support. We've seen too many talented young people fall through the cracks. We want to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." Elena appreciated everyone's kindness, but she was also scared. She had learned not to trust promises from adults. Too many times people had told her things would be okay, and then they had not been okay at all. "What if I choose a school and then they decide they don't want me anymore?" Elena asked quietly. "What if I'm not good enough?" Ms. Huang's expression grew gentle. "Elena, that's not going to happen. These are legal contracts. The schools cannot change their minds. And as for being good enough," she smiled. "Have you seen how the world has reacted to your music? You're more than good enough." But Elena was not just worried about her musical abilities. She was worried about fitting in with other students who had grown up with privileges she never had. She was worried about classroom subjects she had missed during her time on the street. She was worried about being around people who might judge her for where she had come from. Mr. Romano knocked on the door and came in with a tray of coffee and sandwiches. "How is our girl doing?" he asked, setting the food down. Elena managed a small smile. Mr. Romano and his family had been incredibly kind to her over the past week. They treated her like family, not like a charity case. She felt safe with them in a way she had not felt safe in a very long time. "It's a lot to think about," she said. "Of course it is," Mr. Romano said. "You're making decisions about your whole life. Take your time." After everyone else left, Elena sat alone in the office, looking out the window at the street below. She could see people walking to work, children going to school, life going on normally. But her life felt anything but normal now. Her phone buzzed, constantly with messages from reporters, people offering help, and strangers who had seen her video. She had learned to ignore most of them, but some of the messages were from other young musicians who understood what she was going through. One message that afternoon caught her attention. It was from a girl named Sarah who went to the Manhattan School of Music. "Hi, Elena," the message said. "I saw your story and wanted you to know that MSM is an amazing place. The teachers really care about students, not just their talent, but their whole person. I came from a difficult background too, and they helped me feel at home. If you decide to come here, I'd love to show you around and help you get settled." Elena read the message several times. It was the first time someone had reached out to her not as a famous person, but as a fellow student who might understand her fears. That evening, Elena sat at the piano in the restaurant and played for the dinner customers. It had become a regular thing. People came to Romano's specifically hoping to hear her play. But tonight, as she played, she was thinking about her decision. She thought about her mother and what she would want for Elena's future. Her mother had always said that music was a gift but also a responsibility. "If you have the ability to create beauty," she used to say, "you should share it with the world." Elena had been sharing her music with the world through the viral video, but not in the way her mother had meant. Her mother had wanted Elena to study, to grow as a musician, to become the best version of herself possible. After the restaurant closed, Elena stayed at the piano playing quietly in the dark. Mr. Romano came and sat nearby, listening without saying anything. "I'm scared," Elena finally said. "Of course you are," Mr. Romano replied. "You've been taking care of yourself for 2 years. Now you have to learn to let other people take care of you. That's scary. What if I choose wrong? What if I go to one of these schools and I hate it?" Mr. Romano was quiet for a moment. "Elena, let me tell you something. 2 years ago, when you lost everything, you could have given up. You could have stopped playing piano, stopped believing in yourself. But you didn't. You found ways to keep your music alive even when you had nothing else." He paused, looking at her with kind eyes. "That tells me you're stronger than you think. If you choose a school and it doesn't work out, you'll figure out how to make it work, or you'll find another way. You survived the worst thing that could happen to you. You can handle whatever comes next." Elena felt tears coming to her eyes. "I just don't want to disappoint everyone. All these people believe in me now. What if I'm not as special as they think I am?" "Elena," Mr. Romano said firmly, "you're not special because you're famous. You were special before anyone knew your name. Your talent, your strength, your ability to find beauty even in dark times. That's who you are. Fame doesn't change that." That night, Elena lay in her small bed above the restaurant, thinking about all her options. She thought about the different schools, the different cities, the different lives she could choose. But she also thought about Romano's restaurant, about the family that had taken her in, about the place where her new life had begun. She did not want to forget where she came from or the people who had helped her when she had nothing. The next morning, Elena called Ms. Huang with her decision. "I want to accept the offer from Manhattan School of Music," she said, "but I have some conditions." "What kind of conditions?" Ms. Huang asked. "I want to be able to come back to Romano's on weekends to play for dinner customers. This place saved my life, and these people are my family now. I don't want to lose that." Ms. Huang smiled. "I think that can be arranged. Manhattan is only a few hours away. What else? I want to use some of the money people donated to start a program that helps other homeless kids who have talents but no opportunities. Music, art, writing, whatever they're good at. I don't want other kids to go through what I went through. That's a beautiful idea, Elena. We can definitely help you set that up. Elena felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was still scared about going back to school, about living with other students, about all the challenges ahead. But for the first time since her mother died, she felt like she had a real plan for her future. And more importantly, she felt like she was making choices that would honor her mother's memory while also helping other kids who needed someone to believe in them. She was not just accepting help anymore. She was getting ready to help others. 6 months later, Elena stood backstage at Carnegie Hall wearing a beautiful black dress that actually fit her properly. Her hair was clean and styled, and she looked like a completely different person from the homeless girl who had asked to play for food at Romano's restaurant. But inside, she still felt like the same Elena. Her hands were shaking with nerves, just like they had that cold November night when she first approached Mr. Romano. "You're going to be amazing," said Sarah, her friend from Manhattan School of Music. Sarah had become Elena's roommate and closest friend, helping her adjust to school life and navigate the challenges of suddenly being famous. Elena peeked through the curtain at the audience. Carnegie Hall was completely sold out. Every seat was filled with people who had come to hear her play. She could see Mr. Romano and his whole family in the front row, dressed in their best clothes. Maria was dabbing her eyes with a tissue and she had not even started playing yet. The concert was a benefit for Elena's new foundation, which she had named Hidden Keys, after something her mother used to say. There are hidden keys to music. All around us, we just have to know how to find them. In the 6 months since accepting the scholarship to Manhattan School of Music, Elena's life had changed completely. She lived in a dormitory with other music students, took classes in music theory and composition, and practiced on beautiful grand pianos every day. The adjustment had not been easy. Elena had missed 2 years of regular school, so she had to work extra hard to catch up on subjects like math and science. Some of the other students came from wealthy families and had grown up with every advantage, which sometimes made Elena feel out of place. But her teachers and classmates had been mostly kind and supportive. They recognized her extraordinary talent, and many of them had been moved by her story. Elena learned that she was not the only student who had faced challenges. Others had overcome their own difficulties to be there. Tonight's concert was Elena's idea. She wanted to give back to the community that had supported her, and she wanted to raise money for other young people who had talents, but no opportunities to develop them. "Ladies and gentlemen," she heard the announcer say from the stage, "please welcome Elena Chen." Elena walked onto the stage, trying not to trip in her new shoes. The audience erupted in applause before she had even reached the piano. She saw people standing up, clapping enthusiastically, and she felt overwhelmed by their support. She sat down at the magnificent concert grand piano and adjusted the bench. This instrument was nothing like the old, out-of-tune piano at Romano's, but she remembered what her mother had taught her. A piano is just a tool. The music comes from your heart. Elena began with the same piece she had played that night at the restaurant, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. But now, after months of advanced study and practice, her interpretation was even more sophisticated and emotional. As she played, Elena thought about her journey from that desperate night to this moment. She thought about her mother, who would have been so proud to see her daughter on this famous stage. She thought about all the people who had helped her along the way. The audience listened in complete silence, just as the people at Romano's had done. Music had the same power here in this elegant concert hall as it had in that small neighborhood restaurant. It connected people, made them feel something deep and important. When Elena finished the Chopin piece, the applause was thunderous. But she was not done yet. She had prepared a full program of pieces, including some that she had arranged herself. "Before I continue," Elena said into the microphone, "I want to tell you why we are here tonight." Her voice was stronger now than it had been 6 months ago. Months of interviews and public speaking had helped her become more comfortable addressing large groups. 6 months ago, I was living on the street, hungry and alone. I walked into Romano's restaurant and asked if I could play piano for food. The people there could have ignored me or sent me away. Instead, they listened. They gave me a chance. Elena looked out at the audience. That chance changed my life. But there are thousands of other young people out there who have talents and dreams but no opportunities. Tonight we are raising money to give them chances too. She went on to explain the Hidden Keys Foundation, which was already working with homeless shelters, community centers, and schools to identify talented young people who needed support. The foundation provided instruments, lessons, and scholarships to kids who might otherwise never get to develop their abilities. Art and music saved my life, Elena said. They can save other lives too. Elena played for nearly 2 hours, performing pieces by Mozart, Beethoven, Debussy, and Chopin, as well as some of her own compositions. Each piece told a story, and the audience was completely captivated. During intermission, Elena met with some of the young musicians who were part of the Hidden Keys program. There was Marcus, a homeless teenager who had incredible talent on violin but had been living in his car. There was Lily, a foster child who could sing like an angel but had never had proper voice training. There was David, an immigrant kid whose family could not afford piano lessons but who had taught himself to play by watching YouTube videos. "You give us hope," Marcus told Elena. "When we see what you've accomplished, we believe we can do it too." Elena hugged him. "You can," she said. "I know you can." For the second half of the concert, Elena invited these young musicians to join her on stage. Together, they performed a piece that Elena had written called Hidden Keys. It was a musical story about finding hope in dark places, about the power of art to transform lives. The audience gave them a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. People were crying openly, moved by the beauty of the music and the stories behind it. After the concert, there was a reception where people could meet Elena and learn more about the foundation. Elena was amazed by how generous people were. Donations poured in from audience members who wanted to support other young artists. Mr. Romano approached Elena with tears in his eyes. "I am so proud of you," he said, giving her a big hug. "You have become everything your mother dreamed you could be." "Thank you," Elena said, "for everything, for giving me that first chance." "You earned that chance," Mr. Romano replied, "and look what you did with it." Later that evening, Elena sat in her dorm room, still wearing her concert dress. Her roommate, Sarah, was at her own piano, practicing for an upcoming recital. Elena's phone buzzed with messages from people who had seen news coverage of the concert. Musicians from around the world were congratulating her. Teachers were sharing videos of the performance with their students. But the message that meant the most came from a girl in Los Angeles who had seen Elena's original video a year ago. "Dear Elena, I'm 15, and I've been homeless for 8 months. I play guitar and write songs, but I thought no one would ever care about my music. After seeing your concert tonight on the news, I decided to audition for the Hidden Keys program in my city. Thank you for showing me that dreams can come true even when everything seems hopeless." Elena smiled as she read the message. This was why everything had happened the way it did. Not just so she could have a better life, but so she could help. Other kids have better lives too. She looked out her dorm room window at the lights of the city. Somewhere out there were kids like she used to be, sleeping in doorways, looking for food, holding on to dreams that seemed impossible. But now there was a foundation working to find them, to give them chances, to help their hidden talents become visible to the world. Elena sat down at her own piano, a beautiful instrument that the school had placed in her room. She began to play softly, working on a new composition she was writing for next month's foundation benefit concert. The music filled the small room and drifted out into the hallway, where other students stopped to listen. Elena's story had inspired not just the general public, but her fellow musicians too. They saw how she used her talent not just for her own success, but to help others. As Elena played, she thought about a conversation she had had with her music theory professor earlier that week. "Your technical skills are impressive," the professor had said, But what makes you special is the emotion in your playing. You've lived through experiences that most musicians your age haven't. That gives your music a depth that can't be taught. Elena had realized that her time on the street, as terrible as it had been, had also given her something valuable. It had taught her that music was not just entertainment or even art. It was survival. It was hope. It was a way to maintain your humanity even when the world seemed to have forgotten about you. Now she was using that understanding to help other young people discover their own hidden keys. Elena finished her composition and closed the piano. Tomorrow she would return to Romano's restaurant, as she did every weekend. She would play for the dinner customers, many of whom came specifically to hear her. She would sit with Mr. Romano and his family, eating Maria's delicious cooking and feeling grateful for the love that had saved her life. But tonight, she was content to sit in her warm, safe room, knowing that somewhere in the city, a kid with a hidden talent might be getting ready to walk into a community center where someone from the Hidden Keys Foundation was waiting to listen